Picture this. You're sitting at the dinner table. Maybe it's a Tuesday. Nothing special about the day. You ask your teenager how school was. They look up from their phone, shrug, say fine, and go back to scrolling. You try again. Anything interesting happen today? Not really. And that's it. End of conversation. But here's the thing. It wasn't always like this. There was a time, maybe not so long ago, when the same kid would run to find you the moment something happened. Good or bad. They'd burst through the door with a story, a question, joke. You were their person. And now, there's a closed door. Literally and figuratively. If you're a parent watching this, you might be quietly wondering, did I do something wrong? Are they angry at me? Did I lose them somehow? And if you're a teenager watching this, maybe a parent sent it to you, maybe you found it yourself, you might be thinking something different. Something like, why don't they just understand? Why does every conversation feel like an interrogation? Today, we're going to walk through what's actually happening, psychologically, neurologically, and emotionally, when teenagers go quiet. Not to place blame. Not to give a list of rules. But to genuinely understand. Because understanding is where everything starts. Before we go any further, there's something important you need to hear. You are not alone. The communication gap between parents and teenagers is one of the most common experiences in family life. In fact, research shows that conversations between parents and teens often decrease significantly during adolescence. For many families, this change begins around age 12 and becomes most noticeable during the teenage years. And while that can feel frightening, it doesn't mean something is wrong. One of the biggest misconceptions about teenage silence is that it means they no longer care about their parents. But in most cases, that simply isn't true. The silence is almost never about love. Instead, teenagers are going through one of the biggest internal transformations of their lives. Imagine trying to renovate an entire house while people keep opening the door every few minutes asking what you're doing. Eventually, you'd want some space to think. That's what adolescence can feel like. Teenagers are trying to understand who they are becoming. Their beliefs are changing. Their emotions are changing. Their understanding of themselves is changing. And sometimes they don't have the words to explain any of it. What looks like withdrawal from the outside often feels like confusion on the inside. The silence isn't always a wall. Sometimes it's simply a person trying to figure themselves out. Let's talk about something that changes the way we see teenage behavior completely. The teenage brain is still developing. In fact, the human brain continues growing and reorganizing well into a person's 20s. During adolescence, billions of neural connections are being strengthened, removed, and rebuilt. Scientists call this process synaptic pruning. Think of it like a gardener trimming a tree. The goal isn't to damage the tree. The goal is to help it grow stronger. The same thing happens inside the teenage brain. Connections that are used often become stronger. Connections that aren't used begin to disappear. This process helps create a more efficient brain, but it also creates temporary instability. Here's the part most people don't realize. The last part of the brain to fully mature is called the prefrontal cortex. This area helps us regulate emotions, make decisions, understand consequences, and communicate complex feelings. In other words, the very skills needed to explain emotions clearly are still developing. That's why many teenagers answer questions with, I don't know. I don't care. I'm fine. Sometimes those answers aren't attempts to avoid the conversation. Sometimes they genuinely don't know how to describe what's happening inside them. To parents, this can look frustrating. But understanding the biology behind it changes everything. Your teenager isn't necessarily hiding their feelings. They may still be learning how to identify them. And for teenagers watching this, if you've ever felt emotions you couldn't explain, you're not strange. You're not broken. You're simply growing.
Beyond brain development, another powerful process is taking place. Psychologists call it individuation. It's a complicated word for a simple idea. Teenagers are trying to discover who they are. For most of childhood, identity is closely connected to family. A child sees themselves as someone's son, someone's daughter, part of a family unit. But adolescence introduces a new question. Who am I when nobody tells me who I should be? That question can be exciting. But it can also be frightening. Because the answer isn't obvious. It takes time to discover. And that discovery requires space. Imagine trying to see your reflection in a perfectly still lake. Now imagine someone tossing pebbles into the water every few minutes. Even if they're trying to help, the ripples make it difficult to see clearly. Many teenagers experience parental involvement in a similar way. Not because they don't love their parents, but because they're trying to hear their own thoughts. The distance that parents often experience isn't usually rejection. It's exploration. It's growth. It's a young person attempting to become their own individual. For parents, that can be painful. But it can also be reassuring. Because sometimes the behaviors that worry us most are actually signs of healthy development. Growing up has always involved stepping away before eventually finding your way back. Now let's talk about one of the biggest reasons teenagers stop sharing. Fear. Not fear of strangers. Not fear of danger. Fear of disappointing the people they love. Imagine you're carrying a thought you're not proud of. Maybe you made a mistake. Maybe you're confused about something. Maybe you're struggling with feelings you don't understand. You consider telling your parents. But before you speak, your brain asks a question. What will happen if I tell them? Will they be disappointed? Will they panic? Will I get a lecture? Will they bring it up again later? For many teenagers, the answer feels uncertain. And when uncertainty feels risky, silence feels safer. Over time, this can become a habit. Instead of sharing everything, they begin editing, filtering, choosing only the parts that feel safe. The result is a relationship where parents know some things but not the deeper things. The things that matter most. Research consistently shows that curiosity creates connection. When teenagers share something difficult and receive curiosity instead of immediate judgment, they are much more likely to open up again. Simple responses can make a huge difference. What was that like for you? Tell me more. How are you feeling about that? These questions invite conversation instead of shutting it down. Parents often respond with advice because they care. They want to protect their children. But sometimes what a teenager needs first is understanding. Solutions can come later. Connection comes first. And when connection comes first, trust begins to grow again. There comes a point in nearly every teenager's life when something changes. The people they talk to the most are no longer their parents. They're their friends. For many parents, this can feel like being replaced. The child who once shared everything with you now shares those same thoughts with a best friend, a group chat, or an online community. And that hurts. But here's something important to remember. This shift is normal. In fact, it's an essential part of growing up. Friends provide something parents cannot. They provide shared experience. When a teenager is embarrassed about something, confused about something, or trying something new, they often want advice from someone who is living through similar situations. Someone who understands not because they've studied it, but because they're experiencing it too. That doesn't make friends more important than parents. It simply means they serve a different purpose. Parents provide security, guidance, protection. Friends provide belonging, identity, understanding. Healthy development requires both. So if your teenager seems more excited to talk to friends than to you, don't automatically see it as rejection. See it as growth. The goal was never for your child to depend on you forever. The goal was to help them build meaningful relationships beyond the family. And if they have trusted friends who listen, support them, and encourage them, that's actually a sign that many things are going right. The role of a parent doesn't disappear during adolescence. It evolves. You may no longer be the center of their social world, but you remain one of the most important people in their emotional world, even when it doesn't always look that way.
So what can parents actually do? The good news is that rebuilding connection doesn't require perfect parenting. It requires small changes repeated consistently. The first change is simple. Stop making every conversation an interview. Many parents ask questions because they care. How was school? What happened today? Who were you with? But when every interaction feels like a series of questions, teenagers can begin to feel examined instead of understood. Try sharing something first. Tell them about your day. A mistake you made. Something funny that happened. Something you're thinking about. Openness often creates openness. The second strategy is to embrace side-by-side conversations. Teenagers often talk more when they aren't forced into direct eye contact. Car rides are famous for this. So are walks, cooking together, gaming together, or watching television. Something about doing an activity removes the pressure. Conversation happens naturally. Not because it's demanded, but because it feels safe. Third, listen longer than you think you need to. Many parents hear a problem and immediately begin solving it. That's understandable. But often teenagers aren't looking for solutions first. They're looking for understanding. Sometimes the most powerful response is simply, "I'm listening. Tell me more. I'm glad you told me." These small phrases communicate safety. And safety creates trust. Remember, trust isn't built during perfect conversations. It's built during ordinary moments when people feel accepted exactly as they are.
Let's talk about something every family experiences. Mistakes. No parent gets every conversation right. No teenager gets every conversation right either. Relationships aren't built on perfection. They're built on repair. One of the most powerful things a parent can say is, "I've been thinking about our conversation, and I don't think I handled it very well. I'm sorry. Can we try again?" Those words carry incredible power. Because they show humility. They show respect. And most importantly, they show that the relationship matters more than pride. Another powerful thing parents can do is express their feelings honestly. Not through guilt. Not through pressure. Simply through truth. You might say, "I miss talking with you. I enjoy spending time with you. I'm here whenever you need me." Simple statements like these remind teenagers that the door remains open, even when they aren't ready to walk through it. Trust also depends on confidentiality. When a teenager shares something personal, treat it with care. Don't turn it into family gossip. Don't use it as ammunition during future arguments. And don't embarrass them in front of others. Trust is fragile. It takes time to build. But it can disappear quickly when someone feels exposed. The good news is that trust can always be rebuilt. Not overnight. Not through one perfect conversation. But through consistent actions over time. Every respectful response. Every apology. Every moment of patience. These are the bricks that rebuild connection. One conversation at a time.
Before we finish, I want to speak directly to the teenagers watching. If that's you, this part is especially for you. First, I want you to know something important. You don't have to share everything with your parents. Growing up means developing your own private thoughts, feelings, and experiences. That's normal. But if there is a part of you that wishes things felt a little easier between you and your parents, there are a few small things that can help. The first is setting expectations before you open up. Sometimes parents jump into advice mode because they don't know what you need. You can help them by telling them. Try saying, I need to tell you something, but I just need you to listen right now. Or, I'm not looking for advice yet. I just want someone to hear me. Those simple sentences can completely change a conversation. Second, start small. You don't have to begin with your biggest fears or deepest struggles. Start with something simple. A funny story. A thought you've been having. A video you found interesting. A song you like. Small moments of sharing often lead to bigger moments later. Third, remember that writing counts too. Not everyone finds it easy to speak face to face. Sometimes it's easier to send a text, write a note, or even share a message you've rewritten several times before pressing send. That's okay. Communication doesn't have to look perfect to be meaningful. And finally, give your parents a chance to surprise you. They won't always understand everything. They won't always respond perfectly. But sometimes they will listen better than you expected. Sometimes they'll be calmer than you feared. Sometimes they'll show up in ways that remind you why they've been there all along. Your parents are learning too. There is no manual for raising a teenager. Just like there is no manual for becoming one. You're all figuring it out together.
Before we end, there's one final thing worth saying. Everything we've discussed today describes a normal part of adolescence. The silence. The distance. The need for independence. These things are usually signs of growth. But sometimes silence can mean something more. If a teenager suddenly loses interest in everything they once enjoyed. If they withdraw not only from family but also from friends. If there are major changes in sleep, appetite, mood, or behavior. It may be time to seek support. And that's okay. Asking for help is never a sign of failure. It's a sign of care. Whether that support comes from a school counselor, a therapist, a doctor, or another trusted adult, no one should have to carry heavy struggles alone. And now, let's return to where we started. The quiet dinner table. The short answers. The closed bedroom door. Because here's what I hope you'll remember. The silence between parents and teenagers is almost never about love. More often, it's about growth. It's about two people learning how to relate to each other in a new way. A parent learning to give space. A teenager learning to become themselves. And somewhere between those two journeys, a new relationship begins to form. Maybe not the same relationship that existed when the child was younger. But something different. Something deeper. Something built on mutual respect. You is not locked. It may feel stuck. It may open slowly. But it is still there. And every act of patience. Every honest conversation. Every attempt to understand instead of judge. Is another hand reaching for the handle. So whether you're a parent or a teenager, don't give up on each other. Keep the door open. Keep trying. Because the people we love are almost always closer than they seem. Thank you for watching. If this video resonated with you, consider sharing it with someone who came to mind while you were listening. And before you go, leave a comment below. What's one thing you wish the other person understood? Take care of yourselves. And take care of each other.